Hey writers, last time we met you were super writers and you made your flash drafts. We were so impressed with the hard work that you put into those flash drafts last week. I bet you didn't even know that you could do that. Every member of the class sat for 45 minutes and worked the entire time turning their organizers into an essay, adding important details and adding important elaborations to really make these essays come to life. So today, I want to teach you that the introduction of your essays, it's very important. So we're going to do some revising today, focusing on the beginnings of our essay. We're going to learn how to write something about all literature, and then use that to write about our own story. So what do I mean by that? Have you ever used Google Maps before? If you've never used it, let me explain. So you can start out like an astronaut, looking down at the whole Earth, and then you zoom closer in on the Earth, and I'll show you this in just a moment. As you get closer, you begin to see countries, and then states, and then cities, and then you can see your exact location. So let's take a look at this. When we're looking at Google Maps, you start out really far away. And then we can start to zoom in. We can zoom in on our country, and then we can zoom in on our state, and then we can even zoom in to find our exact location. If we keep going here, you may start to see some familiar places. So what we are going to do in our essays is start big, like the astronaut looking down on the full Google Maps. So we're going to talk about something that we see in most stories. So for us, that's going to be the theme. We've discussed how some stories may have the same theme. That's because this is something general that applies to stories in general. So then what we're going to do is zoom in all the way on that theme to see how our story fits it. How is our story like most stories, or how is our story different than most stories? So let me give you some examples of this. Saying something big about life or something big about stories, that will then set you up to lead into making your point about your story. So this is a student, Jill. I typed up some work from her notebook. She was reading a story and she was trying to talk about struggle, how characters struggle. So we know that in general we all struggle. So she wanted to zoom out and not talk about her character yet, but she wanted to talk about struggle in general, struggle throughout her life. So here's a brainstorm that she had in her notebook. She said, whenever I watch a movie, I know there will come a part when the music changes and I need to worry about the character. That part is sure to come because in the movies, as in all stories, characters struggle. So that's something big. It's not super specific. It's talking about struggle in general. Her next idea, my life is full of problems. Everywhere I turn, it seems that there are problems. When I read stories, I realize I'm not alone. Characters in books, too, struggle with problems. So again, she's not talking about the story she is specifically reading at. She's talking big idea. Finally, she said, in school, I learn from lessons that teachers teach, but when I read stories, I learn from problems that characters encounter. When I see how people in books face their problems, I become better at facing my own problems. So now what I'm going to do is get rid of this, and I'm going to show you what she typed as her introduction. So using those bullet points, she wrote, in my life, not everything ends up like a fairy tale. I like to read books where characters are like me. They don't live fairy tale lives. We have the same kinds of problems. In Sandra Cisneros' essay 11, Rachel has problems like I do. In this essay, Rachel struggles to hold on to herself when she is challenged by people who have power over her. So what this writer did was take those 3 bullet points talking about struggle in general, and then she took some time to talk about it, and then she took time to zoom in on her essay. So this entire part here is her talking about struggle in general. She hasn't even mentioned her story yet. It isn't until this part here that she mentions her story. A lot of our introductions right now might look like this highlighted part. So it's our job today to connect it to our lives. So how can we introduce this topic without even talking about the book yet? Are you writing about kindness? Are you writing about struggle? Are you writing about how crime doesn't pay? What is it that you are writing about, and what can you talk about generally? So to help our brains kind of do this, what you're going to do is think about the theme in your story. Everybody has picked out a theme. We're going to head to recap, and what you're going to do is talk about that big theme in terms of how it applies to most stories or to life. So if you are talking about struggle, I want to hear ways that maybe you have struggled throughout life or places you have seen struggle. If you're talking about how kindness is rewarded or kind things are rewarded, talk about moments where you have experienced kindness or you have seen how that pays off. Once you've talked about your theme in that way, now I want you to zoom in on your story. How does kindness relate to your story? Or how does struggle relate to your story? When you're finished talking about it, go ahead and write about it. Give your introduction your best try. Today, I'll be coming around and meeting with students. You might be struggling, or maybe I'm just coming to check in. Remember, as you're writing, you are spending your entire 20 minutes writing. If you finish your introduction, you should be going back to other parts of your essays as well. So you do not just have to revise your introduction, although I should see a change in everyone's introduction. Happy writing.